All right, boys and girls, we're going to look at adding and subtracting fractions with unlike or uncommon denominators. So this is going to be a skill that we really get into after our Christmas break, where we're taking what we were doing prior to Christmas break and adding and subtracting with like denominators or common denominators, and now changing it up where we're adding and subtracting with unlike. And so this first video is just going to show you how to do it using fraction tiles. Now, the fraction tiles are nice to look at. You should be able to see the connection between equivalent fractions with these, but we're eventually going to pull these away and have to do it just by using an algorithm. So I'm going to try to walk you through what this would look like using fraction tiles and see if this will make sense to you. So on this first page here, we have a problem of 1/6, and I'm going to write it out, 1/6 plus 1/3. Okay, so what we're looking at here is, something not too bad, but something that is going to be new to you because you didn't ever have this as fourth graders. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to look at, I'm going to kind of use arrows here to kind of give you a visual of kind of the path I'm going to go through to get this answer. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go from this first picture that I have in the top left corner to the second picture. So I'm going to draw an arrow, and I'm going to show really kind of what the problem looks like. So we know that the problem is 1/6 plus 1/3. So I'm going to put a little plus sign in between on my fraction tiles to show that that's what I'm really doing. Well, when I do this, one of the things that you're going to have to do as a fifth grader this year is you're going to have to, this is how I teach it in my classes, you're going to have to turn a fifth grade problem back into a fourth grade problem. So, and kind of what I mean by that is you're looking at a fraction or adding fractions together that have unlike denominators, which is fifth grade, but your goal is to want to try to have both the denominators the same, which would be a fourth grade problem. And so, and a much easier problem. And so the second picture here, if you look closely, if you look at the bottom, and I'm going to circle it here, if you look at the bottom, what this is showing is 1/3 is the same thing as 2/6. Those are equivalent fractions. So like if I wrote that out to the side and I thought about simplifying, 2/6 could be simplified down to 1/3. And so when I see that, I can kind of get a visual back up here that really and truly all this is going to amount to is just 1/6 plus 2/6. 1/6 plus 2/6 is a fourth grade problem because they have common denominators. So I'm going to take the 1/6 that I already knew, and then if I think about the 2/6 that I now know is the same thing as 1/3, then I can now add those together and I can get a simple answer of 3/6, or what you should know as a half. And that's the bottom picture, and you can kind of see there where they're getting that half at. So one of the things that you have to really think about when you're doing these problems is when you're adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, you have to go find a common denominator. Now, with fraction tiles, it's a little bit easier because you have that visual. When you don't have the fraction tiles and you're using an algorithm, it gets to be a little bit harder. But it's one of those things where if you know your multiplication facts, it's not that bad. It gets pretty easy, and over time, the more you do it, it's probably going to be one of the easier things that you do, especially coming back from Christmas break, because we're going to be doing a lot of it. And so I think here on this page again, it's just a good visual to see what's happening with your fractions and how you're trying to find common denominators. Okay, so this second page is just another example. I have a couple pictures here to look at. So I'm going to set up the problem of 1/4 plus 1/3. And I'm going to try to find the answer to 1/4 plus 1/3. Okay, so this top picture here that I'm looking at, I'll put a little star up here. This top picture shows me that if I took a fourth and I took 1/3, 1/4 plus 1/3, the common denominator there would be twelfths. Those are two, those two fractions, 1/4 and 1/3. If you went and found a common denominator using fraction tiles or fraction strips, you would find that twelfths would be common. And so really all it's doing here is showing that, okay, if you took a fourth, that's the same thing as 3/12. And if you took a third, that's the same thing as 4/12. And so now, this is kind of what I was saying on the previous page, this is my 5th grade problem. But what I really could do is turn it into a 4th grade problem. 3/12 plus 4/12. And if I add those two things together, which you'll see in this picture up here, basically all you're doing is just adding them together to get 7/12. And 7/12 cannot be simplified, and so that is your final answer. All right, on this last page here, this is a little bit different because it's adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So we're going to look at a subtraction problem. So this problem here is going to be 11/12 minus 2/3. And so what this is doing on this one, or what you could see on this particular page, is you could see that if you look above, right here on the little star, if you look here, 2/3, if I were to draw an arrow straight up, I can already tell 2/3 is the same thing as 8/12. So if I took 8/12 underneath and I simplified it, and I could divide that by 4/4, I would get the fraction of 2/3. So I can already see that in that top model. But if I go to the second picture here, basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking this, and I'm going to label as I go through it, I'm taking this 11/12 up top, and I'm getting rid of, because I'm subtracting, I'm getting rid of 2/3. So my 2/3 is underneath. So what I really could do if they gave me a picture, something like this, is I could just scratch this out and say, okay, I'm getting rid of this 2/3, and then what I have left here is 3/12. And then if I go down the picture below, 3/12 is the same thing as 1/4. And so I could say, okay, 11/12 minus 2/3 from our picture gives me the answer of 3/12. Or if I simplified 3/12, I would have the same answer as 1/4. And again, I'm showing all this or looking at fraction tiles or fraction strips when I'm doing this. I'm not really doing any math or any algorithms here. I'm just simply using the pictures. And in my class, that's what I tell my students. If they're going to give you a picture, use it. Learn how to use it, because that could really be beneficial for you on a test. So learn how to use those pictures. All right, so look at these videos again if you need to. Watch the examples on how to add and subtract with unlike denominators, using fraction tiles, or using fraction strips.